If you are in the amazing journey of supply chain and procurement, Adventures in Supply Chain podcast is for you. You'll find relevant, actionable content about transformations that impact the top and bottom lines and cash flows. I'm your host, Marcia, and can't wait to share all of this for you to impact your company and career. Hello, Angela. A pleasure to have you. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Marcia. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
And we have an exciting topic, a very hot topic, I would say.
Yes.
This is like the 1 million or even higher question, dollar question. Can we achieve cost savings considering the current situation that we have inflation and we are still facing some material shortages? Is this possible?
So I believe that it is. So when you're preparing your RFP, you need to think about what it is that you plan to measure and setting up those metrics. So is this RFP going to measure against the ROI of an existing situation? So are you planning to submit an RFP to suppliers to replace a product that you currently manufacture in-house or that you're currently purchasing with an existing supplier? And then are you going to gather multiple RFPs from a number of prospective suppliers? So think about those. Are you looking at maybe a make versus buy scenario? So each of those different scenarios is a different situation. And your financial analysis, which would go to the cost savings, needs to take all of those factors into consideration. And that analysis also needs to consider the current inflation rates, and your suppliers would need to address any potential material shortages in their response. So once all of those items are analyzed, I think that you would be able to identify a cost savings.
Great answer, Angela. And yes, based on what you explained, we need to be clear before sending an RFP how we are going to measure the savings. Or another way to say this is like, okay, how are we going to say that we are successful or not, but based on data? And you address very well, like, okay, why are we doing this? Is this for a new product or is this for something that we are already buying? So the first point, okay, we are clear, we need to focus, okay, what we are achieving and how we are going to measure. So related to that, and you mentioned also in your answer that we need to consider like lead times, the material shortages. Have you seen any differences between the RFPs that we conducted before COVID and now that is post-COVID?
Yes. So I think that we are seeing differences. One thing is that the suppliers now, we're far enough into this COVID situation that suppliers should no longer be claiming any type of force majeure due to COVID. So we don't want to see that in
Yes.
an RFP anymore. You should have your systems in place. It's been 2.5 years.
Exactly.
It's no longer a surprise. So no force majeure language.
Yes.
And so we've got the recovery plans should be implemented, and they should address that in the RFP, how they have implemented their recovery and how that is continuing going forward. So that should be in there. But I think that also, with that being said, we need to be a little more gracious with the suppliers as far as the delivery times have increased.
Yes.
So maybe 3 years ago, for particular widgets, you would have a delivery time of 8 weeks. Well, maybe today it's 12 weeks because of their own material delivery times or their resources internally. Maybe they've got worker allocations and so forth. And we've certainly have seen materials that have been on allocation. So I think that it's fair to say we need to give the suppliers a little bit of grace. But in that RFP response, take the information they give you and work with that. But I'd also expect those responses from the suppliers to request longer forecast lead times because they want some security when they're providing these responses. And they're going to want to know that your purchase orders are going to be, how they're going to be cadenced. I'd also expect them to see or to request that those forecasts maybe have a firm horizon that's a little bit longer. So they can expect that there will be fewer changes within a 4-week period. You're not going to be changing delivery dates. You're not going to be changing quantities within this firm zone prior to a due date. So I would expect that in the RFP response. But on the buyer side, we do expect to see those longer forecast lead times. And I would also say that because you're prepared to give those longer forecast dates, you should be able to expect the supplier then to respond and to deliver and to perform. And if they don't, there would be a remedy, maybe in the form of a rebate. So if they're 2 days late, there's a 1% remedy and a rebate. And if they're 5 days late, it's a 2% rebate. And somehow work out what type of remedy you can expect for late deliveries. So I would look for that, especially that type of language would be in a master service agreement or a service level agreement, something like that.
Perfect. So would you say that the metrics are the same than before, but the levels, maybe we need to be more flexible, like with the lead times? I know, for example, a category packaging, right? Flexible packaging film that before we used to have 6-8 weeks lead time, and now we have 12, 14, 16 weeks lead time.
Yes. So the lead time is still a measurement, and now you have an understanding that it's extended, but you do have a level of performance that's expected. Yes.
Perfect. So we will keep those metrics. You mentioned about the forecast that we can provide a period that is going to be locked or fixed, maybe, yes, for weeks, that we cannot make changes, we cannot add or remove items from the forecast.
Not without some sort of consequence.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So what other metrics do you think that we should include on the contract, in particular, to make sure that once we get these savings, we are realizing the savings? Because let's say that the price that we are buying is lower, but if we have quality issues, or if we have a very low percentage of on-time delivery, well, those savings are not actual savings. So what can we include there in the contract to ensure that we are capturing the savings?
So I think that the two primary metrics are still going to be on-time delivery and quality. And quality is frequently measured in defective parts per million. So if you have a remedy around on-time delivery, then also consider maybe some type of remedy around quality. So what can you and your supplier negotiate as far as quality goes? So depending on if it's a lot delivery or a batch delivery, individual piece part deliveries, however your product is delivered, what can be achieved. So maybe some sort of incentive program. If they achieve 100% quality performance for a year, they get moved to the top of your supplier list. And there are things like that. But if they fail, then there can be some sort of penalties imposed. So they need to take some remedial actions. But to realize your savings, they need to be fully engaged and partner. This is a relationship. Yes. So they need to be fully a partner to deliver on time and with the very best quality. But then there are other things. So you may be looking at the unit price. So deciding how your metrics are going to evolve around price. So are you going to be looking at standard price, average price? I personally prefer the standard price, which is usually tied to whatever contract you have. But if the average price is going to fluctuate because of volume pricing or other contributions, then over a period of a few months or a year, you may want to go back to the supplier and say, boy, we've been buying this at a much higher volume and these discounts have applied. Maybe we need to consider lowering the standard price or adjusting in some way the standard price so that you can achieve a savings. You can report a savings to your organization because of that. So that would be a good thing. And then shipping terms. You always want to be conscious of shipping terms. And maybe you and your supplier have agreed that you're going to use air freight, but you're not going to use, the very top level like UPS Red, to ship except in unusual circumstances. And that little bit of excess would be paid by the supplier anytime they have to expedite an order that is at their fault and their cost. So Another thing I think we don't often consider is making certain that we place our orders in quantities that match the supplier's production cadence. So if I'm placing orders for 6, 6 at a time of these widgets, and my supplier manufactures in batches of 4, I'm not optimizing for their production. And, maybe I could get a better price if I did place my purchase orders in lots of 4 or 8, something that would better match their production cadence. And those are things that you won't know if you don't ask.
Yes. And many times that area we don't consider, because we are so focused on the unit price, and we don't consider ways that actually can lower. The same happens, for example, with the order quantity, right?
Yes.
If each time we change the order quantity, the supplier is different. We can keep the same annual volume.
Yes.
But the order quantity is different, and it has an impact on the supplier. So that is another factor that we should be able to share with them, right?
And what if they, their month-end close, when does that occur? And can I take delivery of a few units early to help them meet their revenue goals for month-end close? Is there some, compensation? Can I do something? Can I take those early for a small discount so that they can achieve their revenue goals?
That's a great point. And as you were saying, Angela, this is a partnership. So that is when we start communication with the supplier. So in that way, we can build a win-win relationship.
Absolutely. Another metric that we don't often consider is order confirmation. So a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, they may have a supplier portal, and a lot of these things are handled through the portal. There's not a lot of direct communication from one person to another person. And this is an area that's very easy to slip through the cracks. And if you don't have some sort of confirmation that your purchase order was received and understood, you're at risk. So that's something that I think needs to be a metric, because you would like to see your supplier confirm, yes, I received it and I understood this purchase order within, say, 48 hours, just to make sure that everything is good, everything's golden, and you don't have a situation arise where you're a week out from expecting delivery and you find out they didn't even acknowledge your order. They're not building anything because they didn't flow the purchase order.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you mentioned that point, because we see the purchase order in the system as a buyer. And then we say, okay, we have this coming, but they may not be taking that order if they don't acknowledge. So it's a great point to have that as a metric, so we can track performance. And yes, because that can have a very significant impact.
So if you have a metric around PO confirmation within 48 hours, what percentage of the time did they meet that metric? Yes. It can save so much heartache. I'll just put it that way.
Yes, no, you're right. And now that we are talking about metrics, how
Yes.
do we measure? Because this is what I have seen. It's
Mhm.
like we can have a great contract with many
Yes.
metrics, and or at least the key metrics, let's say it
Mhm.
in that way. We have the calculation, how we are going to do it, but
Mhm.
how can we track that? For example, on-time delivery.
Mhm.
Will the supplier provide a report, or do we need to track? Because I have seen there like a disconnect between the
Yes.
contract and performance, and how
Mhm.
to connect both together.
Mhm. So a contract is a meeting of the minds. It's an agreement. And so I would say a good way is to have the supplier provide you with their data for what the delivery was, for on-time delivery, but then verify it. So if there is, let's say for a 1 month period, there were 3 orders that they say were late, have them, do a root cause analysis for why were those orders late, but then also verify that within your own system as well. What if your system says, no, it wasn't 3, it was 5? So why did they miss the other 2? Were those 2 actually late, or is that an internal problem for you to figure out on your side? So it's always a good, in my mind, in my opinion,
Yes.
it's a good thing to reconcile and your data against one another and make sure that you agree.
Yes, yes, because that's the way to validate also what we have as buyers, the
Mm-hmm,
data.
mm-hmm. Because
Great.
none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. And again, it's a relationship. We need to have a little bit of grace with
Yes.
each other. So, and when we do find mistakes, that gives us the opportunity to learn something and to make a correction and be better next time.
Yes. Yes. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. And Angela, what are your suggestions or steps that we need to take, like if we want to deliver savings, right? It can be on the direct side or indirect, that is, yes, it's a
Mm-hmm.
different world,
It
but
is.
how how can we get to that? What is the preparation, and how we can actually deliver those savings for the organization?
I think the first thing you need to do is understand, what is my cost today? So if I'm going to deliver savings, that is going to be a change from where I am today, an improvement from where I am today. So I first have to understand, what is my cost today? And then figure out, okay, if I'm going to deliver a savings, if I'm going to make a change, am I going to um, outsource this to a supplier when I'm building it today? Am I going to move to a new supplier rather than the supplier I have today? Evaluate the scenarios, the options that are available. And then you want to be sure that you're inclusive of all the risks. And so one of those things also to include in your analysis is your opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
so if I make this change, what opportunities will I not realize? So let's say that
Yes.
I'm buying this material, this product today from some supplier, and I decide to begin to manufacture it in-house. Well, that's going to use resources. It could be capital expenditures would be required, and so forth. And what opportunities would I not be able to take if I make those choices? So consider that in your analysis as well. So your opportunity costs. And then do a return on investment analysis and look at the end result. So it's not just, did this supplier give me a cheaper per unit price than this other supplier? It's much, much more complicated than that.
Yes, but I like that broader view that you are mentioning, because yes, it's not only the unit price.
Yes.
And something that it gets my attention and I become like suspicious in a way when we start at a certain price and then we say, okay, our target price is, I don't know, let's say 25% lower.
Yes.
And then they lower all the way to match the price. That is like, because as we say, it needs to be a partnership, right? So those kind of situations. But very helpful advice. I'm sure that the audience will benefit. I like how you did it with the different steps. You did a great job. And Angela, where can we reach you, or the best way to reach you?
You can always reach me on LinkedIn, and then also my website. So my company is Thurman Co., and the website is thurmanco.com.
Perfect. So thank you so much again, Angela, for joining us. We are ready to get those savings, and yes, by following your steps. So then I let you know. But thank you so much. A pleasure.
Thank you, Marcia. It's been my pleasure. Yes.
Thank you.